I didn't expect balloons or a banner. I've never been that kind of birthday person. But I did think, naively maybe, that turning 25 would warrant a phone call. Or a text. Something more than silence. I made my own coffee. Sat on the porch, just like I always do on quiet mornings. I opened Instagram to scroll through messages, half hoping for one of those group video messages from my parents, even if it was awkward and last minute. But there was nothing. Just ads and one, "Happy birthday, bro," from a guy I hadn't seen since high school. By noon, I tried to laugh it off. Told myself maybe they were planning something. Maybe it was just going to be late. I even cleaned the apartment, just in case someone dropped by. No one did. It was around 7 p.m. when I saw the post. Mia's boyfriend had uploaded a carousel on Instagram, a huge table spread with food, a cake, some streamers in the background. Everyone was there. My mom, my dad, my cousins, even Aunt Joyce, who lives 2 states away. The caption read, "Congrats, babe. You deserve the world party popper." I stared at it for a long time. Not because of the party, because of the date stamp. It was posted an hour ago. The cake was still fresh. The lighting was unmistakably from the dining room at my parents' house. And there in the background, just barely out of focus, was a happy promotion sign. My birthday. My actual birthday. They were all together, celebrating Mia's boyfriend's promotion. Not mine. Not even a mention. It felt surreal. I wasn't angry. Not yet. It was more like something in me just stopped. A switch flipped. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to defend them. I didn't reach for some excuse to cushion the blow. I just sat with it. Later that night, I ordered takeout, watched a movie I didn't finish, and opened my laptop. I created a blank Google Doc and titled it, "The Uncelebrated Son." I don't know exactly why I did it. I didn't have a plan. But I needed a place to put the feelings that didn't seem welcome anywhere else. I wrote about my 18th birthday, how they forgot until Mia mentioned it during dinner. I wrote about turning 21, and how mom texted, "Happy birthday, kiddo," at 9 p.m. after a full day of radio silence. I wrote about the year I had the flu, and no one brought soup, but Mia got a surprise brunch because she was just stressed out from finals. When I finished, I sat back and reread the last line. They didn't forget me. They just remembered someone else instead. And that hurt worse than forgetting. The next morning, I woke up with that tightness behind my eyes, too drained to cry, too restless to sleep. I reached for my phone out of habit, already knowing there would be nothing. There wasn't. Just a missed call from work and a weather alert. But I couldn't stop thinking about that photo. It wasn't just the party. It was how happy they looked, how easy it was for them to celebrate someone else while pretending I didn't exist. It didn't feel like a mistake. It felt deliberate. I opened the post again and screenshotted everything. The timestamp, the tag on the cake, the faces. I zoomed in on the photo. My mother was holding a wine glass. My dad had on his family barbecue polo, the same one he wore every year on Mia's birthday. And there it was on the table, a second cake. Smaller. Off to the side. I looked closer. It said, "Congrats, Matt." That was Mia's boyfriend. So not only was the whole family gathered, not only had they planned a party on my birthday, they had room for 2 cakes. Just not mine. I felt sick. Not angry, not heartbroken. Just hollow. I opened my document and started typing again. I wrote about the time I turned 10, and my mom asked if we could just combine it with Mia's next week. I wrote about the year I bought my own cake, and Dad said, "That's a little sad, isn't it?" before eating 2 slices himself. I wrote about 23, when I texted a reminder the night before and still didn't get a call. There's a line I kept repeating as I wrote. It wasn't just forgetting. It was remembering selectively. I don't think I was ever the kind of son they knew what to do with. I didn't cause problems. I didn't demand attention. I wasn't loud or charming or effortlessly photogenic like Mia. I was the one they leaned on when the sink leaked or the printer jammed. The one who sat quietly at events, taking the group photos, not appearing in them. And maybe that made me easy to overlook. But easy isn't the same as invisible. And yesterday, for the first time in my life, I stopped giving them the benefit of the doubt. I pulled up my mom's number, stared at it, thought about calling and asking, point blank, "Did you really forget? Or did you just choose not to care?" I didn't press call. Not yet. Instead, I searched my old Google Photos archive and started organizing albums. Birthdays I remember. Birthdays they didn't. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them yet. But seeing the gaps made the truth harder to ignore. I wasn't mourning a forgotten birthday. I was mourning a lifetime of being the family's placeholder. The one who filled the silence so no one had to feel it. The one who didn't make waves. But maybe it was time to make some noise. I thought about texting Mia too. Just a single question. Did you know? But I didn't. I kept wondering what answer would hurt more. That she did know and said nothing, or that she didn't even think of it at all. Both possibilities felt like different versions of the same Bruce. I went for a walk that afternoon. No destination, just motion. I passed people laughing over brunch, couples sharing cupcakes in shop windows, and it struck me how birthdays, those little mile markers of life, meant so much more when someone else acknowledges them. I started to wonder if maybe I'd been feeding on crumbs for so long. I convinced myself they were a feast, and that scared me. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of water and sat on the floor beside my bed, staring at the Google document. I added one more memory before closing the laptop, my 15th birthday. I got a card from my grandparents that said, "We're so proud of the man you're becoming," but my parents forgot to sign theirs. It was blank inside. I still have it. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof back then that I wasn't imagining the emptiness. Maybe I still do. By the third day, the numbness started to fade, replaced by something heavier clarity. I didn't want to feel this way every birthday for the rest of my life. I didn't want to keep shrinking myself to make other people more comfortable. I wanted to stop waiting for a family that had already shown me who they were. But letting go of that fantasy wasn't easy. That afternoon, I called out of work. I told my manager I wasn't feeling well, which was true in a way I didn't have the words for. Then I brewed some tea, opened my laptop, and started writing again. Not just about birthdays this time, but about everything. I wrote about school plays where I was the tree in the background while Mia got roses for being the lead. I wrote about how, during college, my mom told her friends I was taking a break to find myself, when I was actually working 3 jobs to afford tuition. I wrote about last Christmas, when I spent the entire day fixing the garbage disposal while everyone else played board games in the living room. Writing it out felt like proof that it happened, that I wasn't crazy or overly sensitive or making it all up. These weren't just forgotten details. They were patterns. Systems of dismissal so subtle they'd become invisible, even to me. Around 3 p.m., I got a text from Mia. Just one line. "Hey, everything good? Haven't heard from you in a bit, smiley face." I stared at it for a long time. There was no mention of the birthday. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a breezy check-in like I hadn't spent the last 48 hours sitting in the wreckage of her celebration. I didn't respond. Instead, I scrolled through my photo albums and found an old picture of me at age 7, holding a balloon, alone on the porch. I looked tired even then, like I already knew what was coming. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I made a list titled, "Things I've Done Without Them." It included graduated college, fixed my first apartment's plumbing, designed a website for a local bakery that went viral, learned to cook for one without resentment, took care of myself after a minor car accident. No one even knew it happened. I looked at the list and felt something shift. These were my victories. Quiet, maybe, but real. And for the first time, I wondered what a birthday might look like if I planned it for myself. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but just because I deserved to feel celebrated. Not for being useful, not for being the peacekeeper, just for being here. I spent the rest of the week treating my apartment like a sanctuary. Not in the self-care aesthetic kind of way, but like it was mine, truly mine for the first time. I lit candles I usually reserved for guests, made real meals even though no one else would eat them, and played music loud enough that I couldn't hear myself overthinking. I didn't block Mia, but I muted her. That one text, detached, cheerful, out of place, told me everything I needed to know. It wasn't malicious. That almost made it worse. If it had been cruel, I could have been angry. But it was apathetic, thoughtless. Casual disregard dressed up as normal. That weekend, I did something symbolic. I went out and bought a birthday cake. Just a small one, chocolate with vanilla icing. I brought it home, lit a candle, and sang to myself, not with irony, not with self-pity, but quietly, like I was trying to convince myself I deserved it. I took a picture of the cake, saved it in a new album titled, "Years I Showed Up for Myself." Then I emailed myself the document. The uncelebrated son. I read through it again, this time like I was reading someone else's story. And that's when it hit me. If I read these words from a stranger, I'd feel outrage, empathy, a need to reach out and say, "You didn't deserve that." So I did something terrifying. I shared the doc with one person, Tasha, A former coworker who once told me she had cut off her own father after years of gaslighting and emotional neglect. We weren't especially close, but I remembered how steady she seemed, how unapologetically clear she was about her boundaries. I sent it with a short note. I wrote this. I'm not sure what I want from it, but I think I needed someone to witness it. Her reply came later that night. Thank you for trusting me. I saw every version of myself in those pages. That was the first time I felt less alone in all of it. The next day, I started looking up community events in the city, book clubs, cooking classes, volunteer meetups. I wasn't planning to bare my soul to strangers. I just wanted to be around people who didn't already have a fixed version of me in their heads. That's when I realized something else. My family hadn't just forgotten my birthday. They'd locked me into a version of myself I'd long since outgrown. The quiet one, the helper, the one who never needed anything. But I did need something. I needed to be seen. Fully. And if they wouldn't offer it, I'd stop asking. On Sunday morning, I woke up and scrolled through my phone, not out of habit but curiosity. I searched my name in the family group chat. Nothing. Not even a belated message. That thread was still filled with memes, funny pet pictures, and more, so proud of you. Messages aimed at Matt, Mia's boyfriend. It was like my birthday didn't exist in their timeline. And somehow, that made it worse than being actively snubbed. I almost replied. Almost typed something bitter, something undeniable. Glad y'all had time to celebrate a stranger on my birthday. But I knew what would follow. The gaslighting. The sudden guilt tripping. The, oh honey, you should have said something. Like it wasn't obvious. Like I was the one who failed a test I never signed up for. Instead, I turned off notifications for the entire thread. That afternoon, I went to the bookstore and wandered for hours. I left with 2 novels and a journal. Not the digital kind. I wanted to write by hand. I wanted the physical weight of memory. At a nearby cafe, I sat down and wrote my name at the top of the first page. Then, slowly, deliberately, I wrote, I am done asking to be remembered. It felt like a promise. The rest of the pages? Still blank. But I knew what I wanted them to hold, proof of a self I could build brick by brick. Not from their shadows. Not in their silence. But because I was finally ready to exist outside their frame. On Monday, something strange happened. Tasha sent me a follow-up message linking me to a subreddit where people anonymously post stories of family estrangement and quiet grief. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I lurked for a while, reading post after post from strangers who sounded exactly like me. Forgotten birthdays. Weaponized indifference. The silent exhaustion of being the easy one. It didn't heal me, but it reminded me I wasn't alone. I spent most of that day rereading my document and tightening the writing. I cut some parts, expanded others. Added footnotes like a researcher dissecting his own childhood. I made a new title, The Boy They Forgot Was There. Then I posted it. Anonymously. No names, no identifying details, just the truth, stripped bare. Within hours, it got attention. Not viral, but enough to feel heard. The comments ranged from supportive to sorrowful. One person wrote, it's like you reached inside me and put my story into words. Another said, you're not wrong for wanting love you never got. Reading those replies, I felt a quiet ache loosen its grip on my chest. The kind of ache you don't even realize you're carrying until someone else says, me too. Later that week, I got another text in the family group chat. This time from my dad. Hey, you okay? Haven't heard from you. Just checking in. No mention of the birthday. No recognition. Just a probe. A breadcrumb. I left it on read. I thought about leaving the chat entirely, but something stopped me. Maybe I wasn't ready. Or maybe I wanted the final goodbye to come on my terms. Instead, I created a new folder on my desktop. Next year. In it, I started planning a solo trip. Nothing huge, just a weekend away somewhere quiet. I bookmarked cabins, local events, places I could explore by myself without feeling like a shadow trailing behind someone else's celebration. I added a checklist, journal, camera, good shoes, something new to try, a pottery class, maybe. I titled the folder, My Birthday, My Way. That night, I called Tasha. I told her everything, the post, the response, the silence from my family. She listened without interrupting. Then she said something I'll never forget. You don't need closure to start living like you matter. That line landed like a key in a lock. 2 weeks later, I made the decision to leave the family group chat. It wasn't a dramatic exit. No final speech, no angry farewell. Just a quiet removal, like slipping out of a room where no one had noticed you were sitting in the corner anyway. I archived the thread, deleted the contact names, and felt lighter. Not euphoric. Not sad. Just a strange kind of peace that comes when you finally stop tugging at a locked door. The next morning, I booked the cabin. It was upstate, nestled near a lake with trees that burned gold in the fall. The photos showed a wood-burning stove, a journal on the nightstand, and a hammock facing the water. It felt like a place where you could be forgotten, but in a good way, a clean slate, not an afterthought. I didn't tell anyone in my family, but I did tell Tasha. I sent her a screenshot of the booking confirmation, and she replied, "Happy early birthday to the boy they forgot, who finally remembered himself." It made me smile. Not the kind of smile you fake for a camera, but the kind that comes when you start feeling the gravity shift, when your worth begins orbiting yourself instead of others. The trip itself was uneventful in the best way. I brought my journal, a camera, and 2 books I'd been meaning to finish for years. I cooked for myself without rushing. I walked around the lake every morning. I lit a fire and fell asleep to the sound of wind in the trees. On my birthday morning, I made coffee, stepped out onto the porch, and took a photo of the sunrise. No one called. No one texted. And I didn't care. Later that day, I pulled out my journal and wrote, "This year, I gave myself the thing they never could presents." I underlined the word twice. Back home, things didn't change overnight. I didn't suddenly become bulletproof. There were still pangs of longing, like when a friend mentioned going home for the holidays, or when I passed a bakery and saw a little boy holding his dad's hand as they picked out a birthday cake. But the difference was, I didn't flinch away from those feelings anymore. I let them rise, crest, and fall. They didn't define me. I continued writing more essays, some poems, even a piece that got published in a local zine. The post I'd made on Reddit found its way into a few message boards, shared quietly among people who'd lived in emotional exile for years. Some wrote to thank me. Others asked how to begin. A few even said, "You helped me leave." That was never the goal, but it felt like something sacred. I started a new document. This one had no title yet. Just an opening line. I was not unloved. I was just unheard. Maybe it would turn into something. Maybe not. But for the first time, I didn't need the ending before I started writing. I had myself. And that was enough.